out there. You're listening to 95.1 KVCM Monarch Radio, streaming 24/7 at kvcm.live and on Twitch at Monarch Radio. You're listening to DJ Starlight, and this is the blender where we mix it up around here. And today's topic is starting small and thinking big. Joining me today, I have two guests. One is Philip Suba. Thanks for joining me again, Philip.
Oh, thank you for having me again.
And our next guest is Angela Grove. Angela is a professional, she had a successful career as a dressage trainer for 10 years. She recently made her way back into the workforce, and today we'll be talking to her about how effectively she took her passion to the next level and built her own business from the ground up. Thanks for joining us, Angela.
All right, thanks for having me today. Excited to be here.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to talk to someone who owned their own business. So for those of us out there that have never heard of a dressage trainer or a professional acquisitionist, tell us about that. What is a dressage trainer?
Yeah, absolutely. So dressage is an English form of horseback riding that dates back to early military movements and has come along through the years as an equestrian sport, kind of to exhibit the highest level of horse training that there is. So it's something that I've been incredibly passionate about for life and developed an expertise in. So as a dressage trainer, I had clientele that had their own horses who I had in full-time training programs where I would train their horses and train the riders, give them lessons on their horses, coaching them, so to speak, on alternate days, as well as a variety of clients that weren't in full program but would come to me for either help training their horse or help coaching them as a rider.
Nice, very interesting. That sounds like a very nice and fun thing to hear.
I mean, you know, one of the things that I thought of when I first heard this, Angela, and maybe you can help clarify this because it was a question I had too. So I just always thought that anybody that was dealing with horses and, you know, horseback riding or anything was just strictly an equestrian. So what does it mean? What is the main difference between just being an equestrian and then also getting involved in dressage?
Absolutely. So equestrian is more of a term, more of a general umbrella term, I would say, for anyone involved in horse, aka equestrian activities. And once you get under that umbrella, you can break down into English style riding, or Western style riding, which for those of us who aren't as familiar, I think if I say it's the big saddle with the horn on it.
Okay.
That helps people go from there. And then from each there, they go into more and more sub-disciplines and specialties under those. So dressage falls under English, specialty under equestrian.
Oh, okay. And you got into this, like, did you ride as a child? What made you want to do this as a career? Can you tell us about that? Like, what made you decide to do it start a business doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just had it in my soul.
Oh, well, that's where it starts. It starts right there.
I always loved this. You know, I can remember as a young child, my mom promised me lessons, but promised it when I turned 7. And I can remember that being more than one birthday away and just seeming like it would never come.
Oh. And so did you have a horse as a child, or did you just, were you around them?
Mm-hmm. I started with lessons when I was 7, thank goodness. And then kind of kept going from there.
Oh, so she actually fulfilled her
lessons. And then part-time leasing a horse, into buying a horse, and so on. So there's a lot of options of participation levels, and we kind of moved the way through them.
Wow.
That's really interesting. I mean, I think I was probably around the same age that I attempted to try horseback riding, and I will tell you, Angela, it was probably going to be easier for the horse to learn how to ride me than for me to learn to ride the horse. So I tip my hat to you in every respect that you do that. So that's really interesting. It must be it really must be a passion for you if you decided that you wanted to start a business with this. How far along in your career did you decide that you wanted to start something that would be a business that evolved into dressage training?
Yeah, so I would say I had mixed feelings about it this whole time. Like, did I really want to go into horse business, or did I want to go into the more traditional workforce and then bring it back? So I did a little bit of back and forth, actually. In college, I studied business and marketing and equestrian studies at a 4-year program. So I ended up with three degrees, thinking that I could use that to marry it all together at some point. But it wasn't until after graduating, after doing an internship with an Olympic competitor, and then spending some years in marketing and project management for a development company, that I forged out on my own with my own business. So it took me a while to get there.
Nice. Well, you had a plan. And what exactly, what was the full inspiration to say, let me just go forward? Is it because you did it as a child and it was just a burning passion you just had to fulfill? Is that what inspired you to develop your, to start an actual business doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I had to, it's something that I just absolutely had to do in my lifetime at one point or another. I wasn't sure exactly when or how it was going to come together, but I put it into the universe that this was something I needed to fulfill in my life.
Oh, well, that's where I said it all starts. It all starts from really, because it's like they say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right?
That's right.
So it's like if you have this desire to do this, you're ultimately never really going to be happy until you fulfill, at least give it an attempt to see whether it's something that you want to do. And it starts there with whether it's going to be successful. And apparently yours was successful for 10 years. And it's because of having that desire to want to do what you ultimately want to do that makes things work the way that they work.
Yeah.
So for the 10 years that you did have your business, I heard that you started everything from the ground up on your own.
Yeah, I did. I had a nice opportunity and as a head trainer at this great facility in Malibu. And I did do the work myself, but I had a lot of great support in the facility owners and the team around me.
Nice.
And so that is something that I think is really critical. I had a plan. I put it together. I put in the time. Big believer in sweat equity. You just work and it pays off at some point. That's the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate to have contacts and people around me that wanted to see me succeed, and I could lean on for advice, support, or just a friendly hug on the hard days.
And see, that's important to have a support system. That's very important when you're trying to build something, because you need people to back you up, to let you know that what you're doing is you're on the right track. Mentor you. Just that support system is very important for any new business owner.
Yeah, I can totally. I mean, I've never had a business, but I can imagine that starting your own business is probably very exciting and risky at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it must have been difficult to leave a full-time position to pursue these aspirations that you have. So tell me, after starting your own business, how long do you think it took for the business to really take off for you?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's funny you say that. It was very scary for me.
I can imagine.
Yeah, yes.
But I was so excited to do it. And I would say that within the first year, I felt very confident that it was the right choice and things were going in the right direction. It was building up clients, getting more familiar. I think it takes at least a year so that you start to do some things on repeat, to start to build your expertise there and your comfort level. And so I'd say about a year, and it really started to feel very solid.
Wow. And just what made you come to California? Was it to do this specifically, or were you going to school here? How did you ultimately end up in California?
Yeah, I moved out here from Cleveland after college, and I think unlike a lot of other transplants, I didn't really have a strong desire to move to California or Los Angeles, and I never thought I would stay.
Same
I
here.
have. But I came out, I was recruited to act as an assistant or internship for an Olympic dressage competitor in the LA area. And so
Oh.
I came and spent a year. They call it a working student in the equestrian world,
Okay.
but you could call it an internship, I
Mhm.
suppose. Just working my butt off and absorbing everything I could.
I see.
Wow.
How did you decide where to establish your business? I mean, I know you came out here, on the working internship, but was there any particular strategy in terms of where you decided to really start things on your own?
So it's part strategy and part the luck of the universe. I really believe that, I've had some ups and downs in my life, and I just feel that timing really does bring things together. So
It's true.
I was riding part-time on the weekends. I was really missing it, and I was spending time at this facility out in Malibu. And when they had a shift of trainers at that place, there was an opening, and it caused this whole thing to happen. A conversation started, and an interest developed on both sides, and we really took it from there.
Wow. Timing is everything. Really.
Yeah, it seems
And
like
Yes.
and they do say that, the right place at the right time
Yeah,
is
things will
always
line
where
up.
it is. Yes, it
Exactly.
is. So once all that happened, how did you raise money to get started? Did you have I'm assuming GoFundMe was not an option.
it still isn't.
No, it wasn't.
Right? How did you raise money to get started? How did you get the money to start your venture?
I didn't do fundraising. I just went for it.
Wow.
Wow, that
I
is really risky.
just stepped out and did it, and I knew that I would have a couple of clients in place to get started. A couple that were staying on at the facility and not moving on with their previous trainer. So I knew I would have something to start with, but it wasn't much. But it was not zero. And I also was very fortunate. My mother also was an avid horsewoman at the time and had a lot of equipment. And so I got a lot of hand-me-down equipment from her shipped out here. And that was extremely helpful because the equipment to get started in that way is it's astronomical. So that made a huge difference.
And now, getting the equipment from where you're from, which is where exactly? Cleveland. So she had to ship that equipment, or she drove it here? How did that happen?
She shipped some out, and then I had some of my own stuff already. But when you're a trainer, you really need so much more. So she would ship some, or she'd come visit. She'd bring me some things she wasn't using anymore, and that really helped me build up my inventory of what I needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very interesting to hear what you're saying right now, Angela, because this is one of the things that I think is the reason that we're doing this topic today. You mentioned about just taking the risk and just going for it. And I think you do have to step out of your comfort zone, especially if it's something that you really want to pursue, whether it's working in your career full time for an employer or doing business on your own, which is exactly what you did. So, I mean, I think that's the way that you make things happen. If you don't take that chance, you'll never know what happened. So, it does sound like you were basically a one-person show doing all of this. How did you handle things like the advertising, getting new clients, or just the overall branding for your own business?
Well, it was a great learning experience about so many aspects of running a business because, in addition to being the coach and the trainer of these horses and people, I really did have to run everything. So I taught myself QuickBooks, did my accounting. I thought back to the principles of marketing, and I was fortunate to do a lot of that in my previous position as well. And so I would create, and it sounds so old school now.
No.
I made very nice flyers, laminated, and put them up at the local tax shops, which is where people go to buy their horse equipment and clothing and things like that.
That was smart.
I did print advertising in the newspapers and local newspapers.
Hey, you got to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I got resourceful. I did some donations of lessons or summer camp programs to local schools and their raffles.
Oh, that was awesome.
So that was kind of how I got started with it. I also, put up a website, made cards.
Wow, you really did everything by yourself.
That took a lot of hard work.
And I'm also glad that you mentioned that too, Angela, because one of our previous broadcasts was about how technology is evolving, but also about remembering the foundations of how this technology was developed. I'm sure if you tell somebody now that you made your own flyers, you printed them out, you posted them up in these shops, they'd be like, well, why didn't you just put it on social media? So I'm glad that you're saying things like this, because I think it's important to know when you start businesses and do things like that. It's good to have the social media presence, but it's also good to know how to start from the ground up. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that is the main thing. It's like, people are getting away from the actual grittiness of having had to do all that. Because it's so easy now just to be able to go get a template, get a QR code, and then move on. But to have to actually do all that took a lot of, that's really starting from the ground up, if you ask me. That's really, putting in the sweat and tears and all that they say that it takes to build it. And
absolutely. I would work 5 or 6 days a week with the horses, and then I would have Mondays off. But that was my office day, so I would spend my time putting everything together, doing my invoicing, reaching out to clients, building my online presence through, Google and so on.
Yeah, and you got really resourceful too, like we were saying, as far as figuring out how to get the word out there. Now again, it's so much different. It's so much easier for people to be able to get things out there and kind of navigate through things, because everything's kind of already done for you. It's just a template. You just put what you want in it, but to have to start like that is a big deal. It's a big deal. I commend you for that, for sure.
Did you find that there was a lot of competition in terms of other people that did what you did, Angela? And if there was, how did you distinguish yourself from other people that did dressage training in the area, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of competition in the outskirts of LA as you get a little bit out of city. A lot of people like it here.
Yes.
A lot of people like it here.
So there was quite a bit of competition. I think part of what helped is, different trainers and coaches have different styles. We're all teaching the same lesson at the end of the day, but you really have to also have that personality fit with your coach and be able to process the information in the way that they deliver it. So I was always a pretty kind and more quieter coach, and that really resonated with a lot of ladies versus a more aggressive style. So part of it was just a style, and there's nothing, there's no better or worse. It just is a better match for some or not.
Okay.
And then location was key.
Right, because you do have to house them.
Small location, but it worked for some and it didn't work for others. So that's really helpful too. Just having a great location that's very desirable and convenient to a certain amount of your market.
And how do you find that kind of thing? Like, how do you actually, because like you said, it's so many choices. Like, how do you even narrow down what's a good location? Like, where can I do this? Like, how do you even do that part?
Yeah, I lucked into the first one, so that was pretty wonderful, but I did have to move my business a couple of times over the years, and it was really a project. So I just hit the pavement, to be very honest, and would drive around to all of the different locations that I could find within a reasonable commute of my client base, and see if they had openings, and then get the rates, check out the facility. It is a bigger challenge than you think, because a lot of places have limited space, or they don't want to support a large number of trainers because it leads to conflict and the businesses cannibalize each other a little bit. So,
Wow.
really just taking all of those things into account and then making the best decision that you can.
No. I mean, I guess that's pretty much how it would be. Like if the consumer were looking for something specific and they come up with all these people in the area if they do a search now, right? So I guess it's a combination of luck and also how you conduct yourself with that person. So, one of the things that is very interesting also about what you're saying, Angela, is like this is a passion that you've had since you were 7 years old, or even earlier than that. I remember when I wanted to pursue something when I was younger, I wanted to make it a career because it was something that I really was passionate about, right? Do you find that now, having been in business for yourself, doing something that you're passionate about, has changed how you feel about what you do? I mean, can you still go back to it as a hobby, or were you just done with it after having the business and it no longer felt like an outlet for you? Because that's how I felt when I was doing music and performing arts. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, I've experienced, I think, a little bit of both, where I get an itch to go back and revisit those days, but some of it still feels like going back to work. So I've been working on trying to find my right balance there. I think I was so fortunate to be able to do so much while I was a professional that to go back and just be around horses isn't really enough to like tick the box for me anymore.
Yeah.
There's certain types of horses or certain special things that I would still love to do and accomplish for myself personally as a hobby, but I can't just do that on a one-off on a Saturday once in a while basis.
So has your priorities basically they've changed over time as far as the how you're whether you want to run your own business or go back into the workforce?
Yeah, I did actually leave my business and go back into the workforce a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And that was a really interesting choice to make as well. I was starting to feel very, very satisfied and accomplished with everything that I had done with my equestrian career. And I didn't have a firm time that I wanted to be out, but I was starting to feel like I'd done it, and that maybe, casting forward into the future, this wasn't the life I wanted to be leading in older years.
Gotcha.
So what years did you have your business, Angela?
I had it from, 2008.
Yes.
2007 to 2017, 2018, something like that.
Oh, to 2018. So tell me something. During that time, I believe that was the time that we were experiencing more than usual wildfires.
Yes, that was
Malibu,
around that time. Yes.
And in the Agoura Hills area, were you affected at all by that?
Yeah, because that's when we had it serious.
Yeah, I mean they were always bad, but I remember
it was
that
really,
one
really
was
bad
really,
that time.
really
Yes,
very
yeah.
bad. Yes.
Yes, yeah, I was very affected by those fires. In fact, I pretty much lost my business to them.
Oh.
It was a really, really wild time for me. We just relocated, and I had my horses spread around 2 different facilities in the mountains there, between Agoura and Malibu. And I spent 48 hours straight doing horse rescue and trying to get horses and my clients' horses to safety and security. I spent an overnight on Zuma Beach, unable to get off and get picked up.
Slept there?
I mean, I didn't sleep.
That.
But you
that's
basically
hard.
had to stay there.
Wow.
That is really.
Yeah, I couldn't leave. It was pretty wild. It'd be like someone's coming to get you, and then they couldn't make it because the roads were too close for fires. So we had more horses than we had trailers down at the beach because other people had come and dropped them off and gone back for more. So we couldn't just leave. I had like 12 horses and 1 2-horse trailer with me and a couple of people. So not even enough people, not even one person per horse to deal with.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was a a long wait there. And we kept getting pushed further down the beach because the fire would kind of like rush the beach.
Oh,
And then we
goodness.
had to
Wow.
But
go further south. It wasn't just like chilling on the beach.
no, I
Right.
can imagine.
Right.
Very stressful.
How did you keep them under control
Yeah.
that whole time? Like they're out of their element too. How did you guys, I guess with your training, but how did you keep them calm and, in line and stuff?
Oh, I have no idea. We just got lucky. I think everyone, even the animals, were just kind of in a little bit of like shock and exhaustion and just kind of waiting it out. Everyone did a good job of keeping it together.
Wow. I mean, I can just imagine what that would have been like for you. I mean, not only do you have your own business, but you have to take care of these horses. And I can imagine that 48 hours was probably the longest 48 hours of your life. But look at what you've been, I mean, I'm assuming you were able to rescue them and bring them to safety despite what was happening with all the fires. But wow, it really does take a lot to own a business, and these unforeseen things are really unforeseen.
Right. And so that was, I guess, the transitioning point for you at that point. You're like, well, can I still deal with this? Is that when you started contemplating, continuing on with this? Or did you just completely lose everything, which gave you no other choice?
Well, so it's interesting because I had started some conversations and had some feelers out there for what might be my next steps ahead of the fire. So I was starting to really think about that. And yes, I was very happy to have those things move forward afterwards. But I will say that immediately after the fire, there was no chance for me to do something else, because even though my facilities had burned down and all of my equipment was completely gone, I mean, completely gone. It took like a month before I could even go back to the site, and I thought I would just see like burned things. Yeah. It's just gone.
Oh just my, gone. Like disintegrated type of thing.
Gone.
Get out of here.
It was pretty crazy, but I was busier than ever because horses, they require your attention.
Yeah, right?
You don't close up you don't lock the door on your business after something like that and not have work to do. So I think I worked harder after the fire to take care of things than ever before.
Yeah.
Speaking of being busy, I mean, I just take it for granted, I being, an employee in the workforce, that if I need to take some time off and do things, I can just request the time off. How did that work for you in general? Not just during that time, but being a business owner. What were some of the advantages of being your own boss and taking the time off, and what were some of the things that were maybe not that convenient for you if you needed to take some personal time off?
Yeah, it was very nice to be my own boss because I would work really hard and I would always be directly impacted. I would always feel my own value, which was great. In terms of taking time off, I always could do it, and I did have the ability to, I made my own schedule.
Yes.
However, there are certain expectations that your clients have, and so instead of having one boss, I had a herd of them.
Oh, you're glad. Wow.
So, they were always very, very gracious and very good in wanting me to, take personal time for myself as needed, or go see my family, whatever the case may be. But I also had a great responsibility to, find a support system for when I was gone, that one would be able to maintain the horses and the clients, and also was available, and also was going to get along with my clientele. So there was a lot to coordinate every time I was going to leave. It wasn't just...
It's like you had to get a team together in order to cover every base when things, when you had to do certain things. So did you actually have a team, or you just figured that stuff out when it came up?
I would figure it out as it came. I had, a handful of team resources that I could reach out to on, occasional basis like that. And And then, during the time I also had employees that would help, but I didn't have them full time all the time. And they weren't always necessarily like able to step in. So I did, but it was never quite the same. So like everyone really wanted me to be there.
Oh, so did you ever take vacations?
I did.
Wow.
I took it and off I went and everything was fine and it was fine when I came back. But that's one thing, people think, oh, you can just do what you want. It's not always true.
Yeah, yes, I can understand that.
I bet. Well, so what were you doing before you started your business, Angela? I mean, even before you did anything in terms of dressage, whether it be here or back in Cleveland, what were you doing in your past life?
Yeah, before I started my business, I was working as a project and marketing coordinator for a development company. We developed real estate, specifically like outlet malls across the U.S. And so it was a small private company, and so I got to be involved in a whole variety of business aspects for them, from evaluating new properties to purchase and flying around with investors to check them out, to creatively redoing the environment for these centers. And we made them, it was so cool. We made like a train station concept. And we had custom trains built in England and flew them over. I put them into our convention in Vegas, and we took meetings in the train cars.
Wow.
Tenant for the shopping center. Oh, it was so fun.
That sounds nice. I mean, it sounds fun. And you were always in the risky business type of area. That seems to be where you always kind of, the real estate thing, and then that like all of that risky, like risk-taking type of business. So that seems to be your niche, huh?
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. Nobody would. I don't think anyone would. When you ask my mom, regard me as someone who loves to take risks. But I really am up for a challenge, and I do have a strong entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is what it really comes down to. I really believe in working hard to build something.
Yeah.
And so that's the sweet spot for me.
I think you need that for any kind of entrepreneurial activity or business. True. What advice would you give to people, Angela, that may be more on the fence about taking a risk and want to do something that's a little safer but still want to do things? Because like you said, you wouldn't be the first person people would think of as a risk taker, but you really are, now that we listen to your background and everything that you've accomplished. What kind of advice would you give to people to take a risk or to be more adventurous in what they're doing if they want to pursue what they want to do?
Yeah, I would advise them to go for it. I think it's really important to have a plan and then a strong sense of dedication to it. And I don't think that you have to have every detail planned out ahead.
Yes.
But you have to be mindful that you're every day going to need to keep evolving your plan to the next level and evolving your strategy to the next level. I don't think that there's, it was a great timing and it all worked out. Yeah, that's only one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, right.
You have to be willing to really dig in and put in the time to build it into something successful. So I don't think that you have to wait until you have every detail laid out in a proper business plan to get started. Sometimes you just need to get started.
Yeah.
And then grow from there.
I like that advice, because it's never going to be a perfect timing, a perfect, plan or any of that. So that is really good advice right there, because if you wait on that day may never happen.
That's true. That's
and
very
so
true.
Getting right into it and just jumping in and just, having the plan already, but trying to make it perfect, that day may never happen.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
I mean, we've covered this in one of the other broadcasts too, but yes, you should plan accordingly. Yeah. There's things that are going to happen that are just unexpected.
Yes, yeah.
And it's more about how you're going to be able to react in that moment when something happens that you're not necessarily prepared for. Do you agree?
Yes, I do agree. Yeah. And like our friend of ours named Richard Sebastian, who's probably listening right now, he always says it's not what you planned for, it's how you react to what's not
Yeah.
planned. It's
Very
the
true.
reaction to, whatever situation that you're in. And he's always said that. I may not be saying his exact quotes, but those basically are
It's
his
very good
words.
advice.
Yeah. It's
Very,
like
very
not
good
what you
advice.
planned for, it's what you didn't plan for that you have to be prepared for.
And I think that's what's made you so successful in your business and successfully able to transition back into the workforce, being able to just take it as it comes, especially with things. I mean, this is the time to really think about that too, not just about the wildfires that happened in
Yeah.
2018, but just everything that we've been going through in the workforce and the society for the last 2 years. You just have to take it as it comes. We can try to plan as much
So
as
true.
possible, but you can't prepare for everything.
And that's the truth. And it's speaking of businesses, though, 5.4 million people started a business in 2021 during the pandemic, which is weird
wow.
because in 2019, when we had none of this even in perspective, it was only 3.5 million. So people must have started thinking in those terms, like, look, I just need to get something going. And so, more people than, like I said, the 2 years before that, actually jumped in and said, look, I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to just take a chance. And the numbers are statistically showing that people were thinking along those lines. Like, you know what? I can't keep waiting. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
It's true. I mean, that's what some other employees were thinking too. They just didn't want to stay in their job anymore and wanted to do something different, whether it's a different industry, a different career altogether, and probably a small subset of that population is about starting their own businesses.
Yeah. So with you transitioning into the workforce, how did that all go? Did it go in smoothly when you dissolved your business? And dissolving it, did you sell your horses? I mean, how did you just be done with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a process because I still had my horses and I still had my clients that I was still taking care of and making sure everything was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did, I did not make any profit on winding down my business, but what I did was refer my clients to a very dear trainer that we worked with and shared space with for several years. And she was one of the ones that would help sit in for me when I needed to take time off, and I would sit in for her and help with her clients when she needed to take time off. So I was very happy to refer a lot of my business to her. And for my personal horses, the ones that I owned towards the end were but they were my lesson horses. They weren't for me necessarily for my own personal enjoyment and competition at that point. And so what I really was most important to me there was to place them in a solid home where they could still be still work, still do their job, but I didn't want them to go to one of these kind of bigger lesson factories or trail factories or to someone that's a total novice that is going to make all the mistakes, even with good intentions, So I really lucked out and managed to place them up near Lompoc at a ranch of a friend. So she's got them in her business now. And it's their own ranch that their family has bought.
Nice.
So they also are doing older horse retirement, and I just feel so fortunate because my girls, they're having the best time up there already, and then they have kind of a home for life.
Yeah.
So important to me, way more than any money that I was going to get for them.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, you obviously cared about your business too, so not making the profit was actually an investment back into everything that you did, because you can't just leave it high and dry like that, right? So, I mean, what do you think was the biggest adjustment for you going back into the workforce and not being your own boss anymore?
Well, first off, I think it was the clothes.
I'm with you. Fashion first. I like it.
It really was. I can remember at the beginning, I worked at the barn. I had very nice, very high-end clothes that don't really repurpose into anything else. So I was going and buying shoes, and then I would come home and I'd stop at the store on the way home and buy shoes for the next day. Like, oh, how do people wear these every day? It was really
Wow, that is funny.
I know. You have to like find these little moments to laugh when things are changing. So that was really a big thing for me at the beginning, to be super honest. And then, after that, I think it's pretty good. I was really excited to get into a more team-based environment instead of running my own show. And then I've also found or lucked into a position where it still feels very entrepreneurial to me. I feel that I'm really helping
Yes.
recreate,
I can understand.
rebuild,
Yes.
and improve things
Yes.
where I am. And I actually approach it with the same
Okay.
zest for
what you did before.
as what I did before. It feels real good.
Okay.
Oh,
I
nice,
see.
nice.
So, when you were doing that, when you think about all of this, I actually got from this also that it's not just about taking the risks. It's also about being flexible too, which you seem to do very well because, yes, you had some worries returning to the workforce, but to be flexible and adaptable,
Yeah.
I think that is especially needed now. Especially
It
if
is.
you've been used to being your own boss,
yeah.
and then going back and working for someone else. Luckily, you ended up somewhere where it's more of an entrepreneurial feel while still having that team feel too and everything. What do you miss about owning a business, and not just about the horses that you used to train or on a personal level having them? What do you miss about being a business owner in general?
I think I miss being able to make all the decisions, for better or for worse. That's something that you really get to own completely when it's your own business, and it is something that I miss.
But it's also a big responsibility too, So it kind of goes both ways. It's the big responsibility, but then
there's some days I don't miss it either.
Yeah, right.
I will be honest. Yeah, so it's both. I don't think that it's easy. It's not easy to say that anything is any one thing. There's always multiple facets.
Yeah, because it is. It's a two-edged sword. It's like it's good on one end, and then on the other end, it's not so good. It's almost like being a homeowner. It's like you got that, but then if you lived in an apartment, you got other people doing the maintenance for you.
Exactly.
So it's a two-edged sword. You want a home, but then it comes with all that responsibility.
Yeah.
So it's the same difference. So like, what advice would you like say to somebody that was looking to make the transition? Just say that they did have a business, and all of a sudden they say, not all of a sudden, but they were thinking about not continuing on with their own business. What advice would you give somebody that was looking to make the transition
back into
the workforce? So into the workforce. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think if you're feeling it, like, I think that we all consider our choices every so often in life, but if that wish keeps resurfacing and keeps rising to the top, I think it's really important to explore it. It's been a very positive change for me. It was very positive for me to own my business, and it's very positive for me to have this next change.
Yeah.
So I think we really have to listen to our inner voice and follow that compass.
Yeah, it's not always easy to do that, for sure.
Not. And so you would suggest like they plan it, like start planning to do that, because like in your case you were kind of forced into the situation, but for someone else that was thinking, they should probably try to plan ahead, try to have a plan of action to transition into what they're ultimately going to do.
Yeah, it's good to do that. And, again, in my case, I had started exploring that ahead of time, which was really
luckily
what led to it working out for me afterwards, without feeling to me like I had to do it, even though, I made it very clear for me that that's the direction I wanted to go in.
Yeah.
But I think once that wish keeps coming up, just start talking to other people. What other jobs are out there? Who do you know? Start exploring what your next step is. I had a little bit of a challenge at first because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. I just wanted to start figuring out what the next step was. And so for anyone out there that's feeling that way, this is the time. Talk to your friends, talk to the friends of your friends.
Yes.
Just start learning what other people are doing and throwing it out there that you're interested in learning more about it. And that's next step for you to move forward.
That's a very good point too. And what you mentioned about talking to people and getting their opinions and looking at everything that's being done if you're looking to make that transition. I would probably add to that too. Don't just rely what you see on the internet or on social media. Talk to these people and actually see, what they've been doing, what they like about it. This is all tying back to people that want to make that career change, like what we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But Angela, in listening to everything that you have said, I'm very curious. If you had the opportunity to revisit starting and running and owning your own business, would you do anything differently?
Oh goodness, that is a good question. I'm sure there's always room for improvement, right?
Yes, like knowing what you know now. Yeah, would you, knowing what you know now, would you change anything or would you do anything differently?
I'm having a hard time with that one.
No.
I don't think so. I think I really put my all into it, and that at the end of the day is the best that I could have done.
Yeah.
And I think that's the answer that we were looking for too, because a lot of people say, hey, if I had the chance to do it over again, knowing what I know now, I would do this.
Yeah.
But what you know now is obviously not something that you had accessible to you back then. And there is a reason that you were successful in your business, because you ran it the way that you did. So I think your answer is you don't have any regrets about how you did anything. And I think you got out at the right time, but still have enough passion for it.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And great. Someone that has done something for 10 years and then having to decide to change, I mean, that's got to be a big career decision right there for anybody. It's like you've done this one thing for 10 years, and then now all of a sudden you have to start thinking about something else. It's like for someone who's, having a business, they've done that specific business for 10 years, and all of a sudden they want to transition into the workforce. I wonder, what do you guys think as far as what perspective they could think about, like moving forward? When you say move forward and start thinking about other things, it's like, well, how do you think about other things when you've done just this for 10 years? Like,
yes, that just goes back to talking to people. For me, talking to them about what their jobs are, what other jobs are that other people they know that think are cool, or like being a friend of mine, what ideas they might have. From the outside, because I needed a little perspective on that.
Yeah, because 10 years is a long time doing that specific job, and to have to think of something else. I mean, that takes a lot to have to decide. What else am I interested in? What else may I be good at? All those questions come up with someone who's been doing the same thing.
But then there's two things I would really say to them. Also, is once you get going. Yes. Really don't discount the value of what you learned doing something different. Yes. And the impact it can make in a new career. Yes. There's a lot of value in there that isn't just shown on the face, but there is a lot of deep value to bringing that experience into a new position. And then also really jump in. I'm an avid learner, so yes. At any step of the way, once I got on a path, I would be reading books, listening to podcasts, looking up courses online, and just learning more about my new world and applying my old skills to the new one. And I think that's just, you just jump in.
That's good advice.
That's very good advice. Yeah. And again, I'm glad that you brought that up, especially for anybody that's listening. I want to tack on to what she actually mentioned. When you're at that point of having to make a change, whether it be in her case, winding down her business and going back into the workforce, or vice versa, or even changing careers in the workforce, that's when I think you start to realize exactly what it is that you're capable of doing. Okay, because you're put on the spot. Yeah. You're saying, okay, this is going to be another life change for me. What am I going to do? And I think a lot of people don't realize what they can do until they're put on the spot. So with a combination of planning and experience, that's the perfect recipe to figure out what it is that you'd like to be doing.
And like, like Angela said, taking what you were doing and possibly, incorporating some of those things that you've learned and into whatever you're getting into. Because you obviously may be able to, like her marketing skills and her, all that stuff. Some of that stuff transitions into other, whatever other career you decide to get in. So whatever you can use from what you were doing and, have that transition into what you're going to be doing, that's also a good thing, because at least you won't feel so out of your element that you can't use any of the stuff that you've done for 10 years. At least you can use some of that stuff to usefulness, you know what I mean, and make you feel like at least it's not a huge transition. It's not like going from being a farmer to a secretary. I'm just saying, because you know what I mean. But and all you did was feed animals all day, but then you go and start, just doing being on a computer all day, completely out of your element at that point is what I'm saying. Unless you were doing some of the things like you said, on Mondays you were doing your marketing, you were doing this and that, then it's not so much of a huge transition. So take some of that stuff that you were like you learned and and put that into some of the things that you're going to get into.
Yes, and I think I've known Angela now for about almost 3 years.
Okay.
And one of the things that I can say in terms of her working by example, is that any experience is good experience. And I'm sure that you felt that too in your business too.
Yeah.
It's how you apply that experience to your next venture that is going to matter, because I do believe that any experience is good experience, whether it's a good one, whether it's a bad one, whether it's a mediocre one. You're always going to be able to translate that into something that you're doing. Because experience is experience.
That's right.
It's how you apply it.
And it's funny you say that, because Tyler Perry had said one time before, like he was I'm just going to say, I don't know if this is one of his, but like he was a house cleaner. He did all these different things, and all of those things meant nothing then, but it showed up in later in his life. So being a house cleaner, he had to become orderly. He had to learn how to, keep things in organized stuff. So little things like that seem like they don't mean anything, little jobs like that, different experiences, they actually add up. Like you said, every experience adds up to something, and it ends up applying in some type of way in your life, whether it seems like it's frivolous or not. It ends up being a part of something. Like I said, something like that shows, okay, look, you got to keep order. This is where, you know what I mean, being that, or a cook, different things transition into different parts of your career that you decide, whether it's, and it becomes useful. And it didn't seem like it at the time, but it all becomes useful.
Yes, I agree. So Angela, we're nearing the end of the broadcast, and I really would love to have you answer this question for both of us. Who do you think your biggest role model has been in your life in terms of what you've decided to pursue for business and just on a personal level?
Sure. Okay. Well, I can't really say one, but
you could choose multiple ones, please.
Parents.
Yeah, please.
I think it's my parents. They really are incredible people, and I look up to them and look to them for an example for different things. They're such a great complementary pair to each other. So I try to take the best of their characteristics and apply to my life.
No, it's great that you have your parents as your role model.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until recently that, especially with what I do for work, the person who's my role model is my mom, and she really is very savvy when it comes to business. I mean, some of the things that come to mind that she thinks of that I would never think of, that requires a lot of foresight and planning and being flexible and being adjustable. What about you? Who do you think has been your biggest influence?
I would say my parents as well.
Yeah?
I would definitely say that. Yeah, I sure would, because they were so supportive of everything that I've ever decided to do. They've never said, even if they thought it wouldn't work, they've never said it. They've always been so supportive with, my decision. Even coming to California, it was like, oh, you're going to go there? Okay, well, we'll support it. It wasn't like, that's a far-fetched idea. When you have that support system, it means everything.
Yes.
It means everything with the way that things turn out for you. So I would say my parents as well. I would.
That's great.
And what about you?
Oh, I definitely think both of my parents too. Like Angela mentioned, for her parents, they're very complimentary in terms of what advice they give.
Yeah.
My mom was always that very is always that very pragmatic and business-minded person. I mean, she had to run family businesses,
Yeah.
and she had to take care of whatever she was doing in the Philippines. And I would observe her sometimes, and I didn't think I would ever take anything away from that, other than I don't think I could do
Do
that.
it right.
And then my dad was always someone that was influencing me in terms of how you conduct yourself with people. People always noticed his voice, how very soft spoken but also very well spoken he was, and he put that on me too, and I'm glad that he did. So Angela, it has really been great
It has
having
been
you.
a pleasure having
Yes.
you on the show. And if anyone's listening out there, join me every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. So, but again, Angela,
Yes.
thank you for joining us. And up next, we're going to have a Christine that's going to be coming up next to take over the show. But Angela, good
Yes.
luck with everything in your
Yes.
future ventures. And thanks again for
Thank
being
you
on
for
the
joining
show.
us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. This has been great.
It has been awesome. Thanks for all the information.